There's Florida, which was totally the opposite. In fact, one of the brightest things we've seen in conservative politics in a really long time. These are massive, massive results in Florida. And you're the expert on this. What happened there?
Well, what happened was a red asteroid that collided into the Florida Democratic Party. They don't need a rebuild. They need a witch doctor or something, like some kind of like spiritual purge. It was absolutely disastrous for them. I think we saw the Florida Democratic Party just collapse. But I think it's easy to get carried away about how bad the Democrats are. But what we actually saw in Florida was a positive, proactive vision for governing by a conservative leader, and that's Governor Ron DeSantis, who has done wonderful things for the people of Florida. As you know, that's where I was born and raised. My family still lives in Florida. I felt very proud as a Floridian on Tuesday night to see his historic landslide election. Nothing like that in my lifetime. Also very successful was Senator Rubio, who I think had a better opponent than Governor DeSantis. He was running against a stronger opponent, and he still beat her by 17 points. So what we saw in Florida was historic, and I think it would be foolish for Republicans across the country to just dismiss it as, well, it's just because they've got a bunch of Cubans in Florida. No, that's not it. Governor DeSantis actually won the non-Cuban Hispanic vote for the first time ever for any politician in Florida. It was absolutely historic. It was a victory of epic proportions, and I think he rewrote the political playbook in the Sunshine State, and people will be studying it for many years to come.
Yeah, it's really amazing to watch it happen. And I think your point is, look, Charlie Crist, I am not capable of feeling bad for Charlie Crist, but if I were to be capable of such a thing, I would have felt bad for him because he was really being thrown to the wolves here. They had no chance of winning this race. I don't think anybody expected him to get maybe less than 40% of the vote. That was just completely stunning. But to your point on Rubio, it is overlooked, I think, a little bit in all of this. And obviously DeSantis is the newer guy maybe on the scene, and he's kind of getting all the buzz. Rubio, Val Demings was a short-list VP candidate for Biden in 2020. She was seen as one of the bright hopes of candidates running in this election cycle. And she just got absolutely destroyed by Rubio. It really was, top to bottom, absolute destruction in Florida.
Yeah, look, Miami-Dade went red. That had not happened since I was a kid. Miami-Dade, so for people who don't know, Miami, Broward, and Palm Beach are three counties that usually vote in unison, and they usually vote for Democrats. Miami-Dade is now a red county. That is historic. We saw a great success down there by my friend Maria Salazar, Congresswoman, who won her race by 15 points in a district that was tied just 2 years ago. So it's difficult to overstate because I think, a lot of people are like, well, yeah, look, it's DeSantis. He's great. But, Governor DeSantis won his election by, I think, half a point or something like that. For those of us who grew up in Florida politics, a 3-point win in Florida is it's almost like a landslide. So a 20-point win is just something completely unheard of, certainly in my lifetime. And I think we're going to be studying this and talking about it for a long time because it was also just the way that he did it. Governor DeSantis didn't just run on the typical conservative issues that we like to talk about, like tax cuts and school choice. He did that, but he also went into like Democratic territory and started talking about the environment. He's had a very successful record conserving Florida's waters and beaches and cleaning it up. He ran on that. He did not hide away from that just because it was a so-called Democratic issue, air quotes. So I think he really rewrote the political textbook, and conservatives across the country need to pay very close attention to this because if we had Governor DeSantis at the top of the ticket in different races this year, I think we'd be looking at very different results.
Yeah, I'm curious as to what your thought is as Florida generally, because the first election I covered was the 2000 election, which what a way to start. And it was the closest of close presidential election states, obviously, was kind of the famous swing state. And it's been pretty close in most of the elections since. You mentioned Ron DeSantis, and DeSantis came in 2018, right? It was that 2018 election, which was a Democratic year. And he was still able to squeak that out. I remember being pretty surprised by that result that evening. And now we're seeing not only a move where DeSantis, I think, is done a really good job and has garnered support, but I mean, have we seen a move from Florida generally that we should start thinking about it a little bit more as a red state rather than the pure purple we used to consider it?
Yeah, no, Florida's brick red now. It is a ruby red state right now. I don't see it turning blue anytime soon. Look, 4 years is a lifetime in politics, but the conditions are just not there. The Florida Democratic Party chair just resigned. One of the great proponents of describing the parental rights and education bill as so-called "Don't Say Gay." His name is Carlos Guillermo Smith. He's a state legislator from Central Florida. He lost.
Wow.
So the guy who coined that term lost. So the Democrat and the Democrats and the entire Democratic bench has been wiped out across the state. Recovering from that is extremely difficult. They don't really have that I could see any charismatic leaders. And in fact, look, just this weekend I was doing a panel on local television in Miami, and the guest before me is a Democratic lawmaker. They just still don't get it. They think they're in California. They bring these talking points to South Florida, describing Hispanics as people of color, and using like woke terminology to describe our communities. That's just not how we see ourselves. We don't view ourselves as victims in this country. We view ourselves as lucky to be here, thankful for the sacrifices, in my case, the sacrifices of my parents and my grandparents. God bless them, because they gave me the opportunity to be an American, which is the greatest gift in life.
That's really cool. It was interesting to kind of watch the Hispanic vote across the country. We know what happened in Florida, and I think you could look at that and say, okay, well, it's Florida, right? They were a great year in Florida, obviously huge gains there, but it's not a nationwide story. And there is some, I don't know, maybe some evidence of mixed results in other areas. I know California had some really positive results. Texas, there was 3 districts in South Texas that I think conservatives were really hopeful for. I think they got one of the 3, if I'm not mistaken. It wasn't quite as good as hoped.
I worked 2 of those 3 races. I can tell you exactly what happened. So we actually made tremendous inroads with Hispanics nationally. If you look at the national exit poll, the percentage, the margin between the Democrats and the Republicans among Hispanics was the best performance ever for the GOP in a midterm election. We surpassed the 1994 Contract with America margin among Hispanics. Wow. So there may not have been a red wave in the country, and there certainly was not, but there was an ola roja, which is red wave in Spanish, because we saw these types of margins with Hispanics that we had never seen before. So I think it speaks to tremendous work. I think there were some really good people who I worked with at the RNC who were really pushing this. And in South Texas, look, it is true. We only won 1 out of those 3 seats. So that's Monica de la Cruz just won Texas 15. She flipped that. She's becomes the first Republican and the first Latina ever to represent that district. But those neighboring districts that where Cassie Garcia was running and where Mayra Flores was running, these are just honestly very solidly Democratic seats. And both Cassie and Mayra had the best performances ever for Republican candidates in those seats. So it's going to take time. No one said that the Hispanic vote is going to flip overnight, but I really think if we keep moving along and we keep pushing forward, we are going to eventually see the Hispanic community come entirely to the Republican side. It's just going to take a couple of cycles.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Giancarlo, but Mayra Flores kind of got screwed by redistricting. She wound up winning the special election, and if that district had remained the same, she probably wins it here. But the redistricting probably was the wall that unfortunately she could not get past.
Yeah, I mean, she was running in a Biden plus 16 district. She cut those margins down in half. And then meanwhile, Cassie Garcia is running against a guy who has been in office since she was in kindergarten and has schools named after him in the community. So, they both had different challenges, but I am incredibly proud of both of them. They're both very good friends of mine. We have not seen the last of them. They are going to be very influential leaders in the Hispanic community and bringing more Hispanics to the GOP. And one final note, look, votes are still being counted in Arizona. We don't know exactly how that is going to turn out. But what we do know from exit polling is that Kari Lake improved upon President Trump's share of the Hispanic vote in that state by 10 points.
Wow.
So we did see a big shift among Hispanics. The problem is that Hispanics are still a relatively somewhat small slice of the electorate, about 10 to 12%, depending on voter turnout. But we're having an issue, and we're having losses with white suburban voters. And there are not enough Hispanics to make up for that in certain states. So we need to keep pushing forward with Hispanics, but also we need to do, I think, a better job at reaching out to the suburbs and letting them know that we share their values.
Yeah, very, very true. Giancarlo Sopo, he's a conservative media strategist, founder of Visto Media. As you can hear here, doing great work, really important work for the future of the country. We really appreciate you coming back on, Giancarlo, and thanks so much for coming on the program.
If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe to our channel so you'll be sure to see similar videos from BlazeTV with the added bonus of signaling YouTube that your voice and opinion still matters. And if you're looking for more great conservative content, check out one of the 2 videos suggested here.